Thank you for coming out. I know it's cold outside. We appreciate your interest in Placentia history and that you come to the library. So my name is Wendy. I am the local history room librarian here at the library. If you have any questions about local history, you can always contact me about using the library history room and seeing some of the artifacts and pictures that we have here. All the materials that we have in the history room are collected through donations. So if you have any pictures at home or any kind of interesting things, be sure to contact me. We'd love to either have them as a donation, or if you'd just like us to scan them and give them back to you, that'd be great. But we can only grow our collection through you guys and through donations, so please consider that if you have been a longtime resident of Placentia and have some photos. So tonight we're going to have a presentation on the 1938 flood. Ms. Charlene Higgins will be our presenter, but before we get to that, I'd just like to introduce a few special guests that are here with us today, and that is the Placentia Historical Committee. They are the individuals who put on these lectures. They do all the research and get all the information together so that we can learn about Placentia history. So tonight we have Wendy Elliott Steinberg, Charlene Riggins, I think Kathy Frizzy will be here, and Jan Henderson is in the back. So let's give a big round of applause. I'd also like to thank the Placentia Library Friends Foundation. They have generously donated the funds so that we can provide some snacks. So if you haven't gotten some snacks yet, we have some cookies and muffins in the back corner. You can also see a nice little presentation that Charlene put together on the flood as well. And then lastly, I'd like to thank Eric, Loey, Sam, Roland,
Close enough.
and Ryan Merrill from the El Dorado High School Media Production. They're going to film tonight's session. As you probably know, they are shown on the community cable channel, so be sure to check it out there. You can also find them on the city's YouTube page. And generally, about a couple months after the presentation, they are available to check out in the library in our DVD collection. So if you know anybody who's missed tonight's session, be sure to tell them about those options because there are lots of options to view it later. All right, so enough. I'll go ahead and pass it over to Charlene.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. How's everybody? Okay. First of all, let me apologize for the way I kind of frantically entered the room. You probably got the impression that, who is she? She don't even know how to get in the room and be on time. I was in class all day today. Last night, my particular area of Placentia, we had a transformer that exploded, and as a result, wires were dropped everywhere, starting a fire in one of my neighbor's backyard, 2 dangling wires in another neighbor's backyard, and needless to say, I ended up with no electricity until 3 o'clock this morning. So as they say, all best plans, whatever done, never turn out right. So I'm not trying to block myself from you, but I wasn't able to make a copy of my lecture notes because we're still, well, not without electricity, we're without internet service at our home. So I apologize for being so frantically. But I do want to thank you for joining us tonight. Oh, I don't know. I'm not.
There you go.
As you can see, I am.
Good. We're getting
Well, I'm opening it down there a little bit. I'm not familiar with all of this type of electrical equipment. But the Placentia Historical Committee put together these series of lectures to try and just, get across to the members of this city how important this city is, a lot of the historical information about this city, and share it with you. That way, you pretty much appreciate where you are a little bit better. At least I have, since I've been involved with the Historical Committee. So again, my name is Charlene Riggins. I teach history and ethnic studies at Cal State Fullerton and some 2 area community colleges here. And I'm a member of the Historical Committee, have been for about 8 years, I believe. And I'm a longtime resident of Placentia. My husband and I have been in Placentia now for 25 years. And we can't think of a better place to be than Placentia. What was interesting, when we purchased our home here in beautiful Placentia, we were meeting with our insurance broker and going over our, home insurance. And one of the forms that we had to fill out was for flood coverage, and our insurance carrier required us to have flood coverage. And we both kind of said, well, why? Southern California, there's no floods, we're usually in a drought, and, we're the desert, and so we kind of questioned it. And the broker's response was basically, and he really emphasized the fact that it was a necessity for them to hold our insurance, that we have the flood insurance because of the past history of flooding in this area. Okay, and sounded okay. My husband said, oh, okay, that makes sense. We shouldn't be too concerned because he said past history. So we didn't think about it anymore, okay? Didn't really think about it until I became involved with the historical committee. So over the years of my involvement with this committee, I have become quite familiar with the city of Placentia and very fascinated with the history of this city. And lo and behold, that past history of flooding became a topic of discussion, okay? So when I started researching about the 1938 flood, I felt a tremendous relief that we had flood insurance, okay? Because can it happen again? Don't know, but don't want to take the chance. But it was fascinating what I actually came across with regards to the 1938 flood. And again, 78 years ago, right? That's a long time, 78 years. A drop in a bucket as far as historical time goes, but that's a long time. So in February, the El Nino, as they called it, and as they still call it, it started raining around February 27th, and it continued to rain up through about March 3rd. Okay, so as a result of that, we experienced a very devastating flood. The Santa Ana River, okay, it basically flows down through the San Bernardino Mountains, okay, and it covers the area of San Bernardino, Riverside, many of your Orange County cities, and it continues on and flows on into the ocean. Today, when we look at the riverbeds, 9 times out of 10, they are dry, 90% of the time, the rivers are dry. But on that particular event, with the heavy rains, the waters began to really rage, okay? The river began to kind of overflow. So this river, Santa Ana, dry Santa Ana River, it began to reach, it began to reach levels of about 8 feet of water, okay, as it started to overflow on its banks and just flowing down through the lowlands. And it caused quite a bit of destruction. Okay. Now, also, while I was researching about the flood, the fact that we are a desert, low desert, okay, we do go through periods of droughts, and then we go through periods of El Nino, right? During my research, I came across the fact that Orange County itself was totally agricultural, all right? And that particular area employed many people in the Orange County area. So most of the people that were working within the agricultural arena, they had identified the March around that springtime area. They referred to them as il lluvia, okay, the spring rain. And it was something that they expected, okay? The rains would come, the river would, kind of rage. Then it would calm down, the waters would recede, and then they're back out, doing what they do, picking oranges, planting, doing whatever. So basically, year after year, the river kind of followed this natural course, okay? Coming down from the San Bernardino Mountains into the wetlands, all the way out through Huntington Beach. So as these spring rains came, many of the people pretty much got used to it, okay? Their idea was, oh, okay, it's raining. We are getting the warnings. Everyone's prepare yourself, make sure you get to the highlands and, but eventually the rain would stop. The clouds would kind of like move on. The sun would come out. And then they would just return back to the picking or the planting or whatever it was. But this particular year, okay, for the last 2 days of February all the way through early March, 2 major storms actually belted the area, okay? Non-stop rain, continuously. How many of you saw the rain this morning? Yeah, okay, looking outside and seeing these, little pellets. On top of that, we're still without electricity, so it's dark. My animals are going crazy, and I'm looking at going, well, I guess this is the El Nino they were talking about. We're finally getting it. Well, that was pretty much what was happening for a period of 3 days during the early spring in 1938. So during that time, these 2 storms passed through. Statistics show that it dumped about 10 inches of rain in the flatlands. In the mountain area, the figure was about 32 inches of rain. And then after these 5 days of heavy, continuous rain, our beautiful little Santa Ana stream jumped its banks, okay? It just totally released the water that it could no longer hold. And this caused about an 8-foot wall of water, right, that just came flowing. Many people were unprepared. They're in their bed, sleep. Maybe with the same idea, oh, it'll pass over, the same thing. It'll go through. We'll wake up and everything will be fine. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. This particular time, that river was making itself known to the residents of Orange County, northern Orange County, okay? So here we have this wall of water, all right? And in its path, it left crumpled bridges, twisted railroad tracks. We're seeing disabled cars, people thinking they can, outrun. You can't outrun raging water in a car, okay? They found that out the hard way. We're seeing tractors just literally being picked up and crushed, right? In the La Jolla and Atwood areas of Placentia, many of those homes were totally destroyed, literally pushed out of the way of this rushing water. And it did the same in areas like Fullerton, Anaheim, Buena Park, right? It just followed its course on its way to the ocean. And whatever was in its path, it literally moved it out of the way. Okay? Now, this flood, again, not knowing very much about it until I just started doing the research, this flood has been identified as one of the worst natural disasters in this area at that time. Okay? It caused many deaths. I think in total with most of the surrounding cities, there were about 50, 60 deaths. Okay? Many people from the Atwood area of Placentia. And Mr. Castro was able to sort of remember some of the families and some of the people that perished during this flood. I think one of the most talked about examples of the destruction of that flood on the communities is the one of a mother, a young Anaheim mother, okay, being swept away
being found about a mile from her home, still embracing her dead child, right? People were just caught totally unprepared for what was happening, right? So we're talking death, destruction, changing many people's lives, turning many cities and agencies pretty much, on their head. We needed help. And the help really couldn't come until afterwards. That's usually what happens in disasters, right? It's like, are we going to be proactive or are we going to be reactive? And in most disaster situations, it has to be a reaction, okay? Unless you're totally prepared. How many of you are totally prepared for the big one? That earthquake that it's going to sever California in half, and oh, good, I'll end up with beachfront property. That'll be great, But you're never really prepared for disaster, so you have to be take the reaction place when a disaster happens, and that's pretty much what happened within the community of Placentia. We had to wait until the help could come. Okay, the communities of La Jolla and, like I said, Atwood were the hardest hit in our general area of Placentia. The devastation of that flood literally left about 3,700 people homeless, refugees. You call them refugees, and they're people of the community. They lost about 1,500 homes. And you'll see when we show the video, we're talking homes that are literally being picked up and carried like matchbooks and like little sticks, and just shoved away and shoved into the other. Like it didn't matter. And to that particular raging river, they didn't matter. They were in the way. They had to be removed, okay? So homes destroyed. It caused, like I said, more than about 50 deaths. It had a devastating impact on the agricultural arena within northern Orange County, and specifically in Placentia. It affected about 40,000 acres of agricultural land. So we're talking the orange orchards, many of them, there are accounts of trees just being, just totally uprooted. And become part of that trail of destruction. Okay? So about 40,000 acres of agricultural land, severely damaged. There was about a total of about 600 acres of land that I found which were rendered unfarmable. Okay? In other words, there was so much silt and dirt and other type of debris that had settled in the land, they would not be able to use it. They couldn't farm it for at least a year or two, until a lot of that debris and sediment, either washed away naturally, or they had to go in and really till and work the soil. So it had a major impact on the agricultural industry in Northern California. So today, like I said, that 1938 flood, and I love it how they just refer to it as the 1938 flood, but it impacted everyone. We're talking LA County, Orange County. The LA River swole, the San Gabriel River swole up, but we're only concerned with the Santa Ana River. We're only concerned with how it impacted us. And that's selfish in a way, but that's human nature, We want to know, how did it impact us? So it has been identified as one of the worst natural disasters in northern Orange County history. It took weeks for that water to actually recede, and come to its original form. The Prado Dam, everyone is under the impression that as a result of the storm, that prompted them to build Prado Dam. Well, Prado Dam was already in the planning stages. I mean, it had already been approved. It had already been a project that the Corps of Engineers were working at, okay? But what this flood did was prove to them, you need to work faster, harder, and get it up sooner than what you had anticipated it being. So it didn't bring the building of the Prado Dam, it just made it more important to have that dam completed in a much quicker time frame. So the building of the dam began, I believe, in late 38 after the flood, but it was actually completed by 1941. So again, I think of my home, I think of the fact that they required flood insurance living here in Placentia. Whenever I drive down the 91, I always kind of look over at the Prado Dam and kind of wave and say, thank you, thank you. Because of you, we won't have this problem again. You know, you cross your fingers and say, hopefully we won't have this problem again. Now, Placentia, the library here, they recently produced a short documentary about the 1938 flood and the impact that it had on our community here in Placentia. And I'd like to present that film to you tonight. Those of you who have already seen it, bear with me and kind of view it again, because it will kind of perk some interest, okay, rekindle some interest, and also rekindle some questions you may have. It features our longtime resident and plus our historical committee. He's an emeriti, Eddie Castro. He's the one who provides his eyewitness testimony of that flood and the devastation and destruction that it caused here in Placentia. So it's about a 20-minute film. So hopefully we're kind of ready to get it going. All right, so take a view at this film, and then I'll come back and kind of see what you feel about it, okay? Mm-hmm. That's fine.
Placentia. I'm Gary Bell. I'm the History Room librarian here at the Placentia Library District. This is the first in a series of videos on the history of our community. Placentia has a rich and varied history, and today we're going to begin by telling you a bit about it. Sodden and battered, the Southland yesterday emerged from a near-record deluge and counted 67 known dead with scores missing. Receding rivers, which rampaged down upon the lowlands Wednesday, began giving up their victims yesterday, and rescuers feared that the total death list might near the 100 mark. Authorities, hampered by disrupted communications, progressed slowly in the search for bodies and check of property damage, believed to be tremendous. 47 identified bodies had been recovered at a late hour last night, and 20 others were unidentified. There are many Placentia stories in this historic local catastrophe, and Eddie Castro's is one of them. As a 10-year-old boy, Eddie experienced the flood of 1938. Here is his first-hand account.
My name is Eddie Castro. I was born in the La Jolla Colony in South Placentia in 1928. I am a survivor of the 1938 flood, and I am going to talk about the experiences as a 10-year-old. Here it is, 1938, and it had been raining since February. There has been lots of rain in the foothills east of the La Jolla area. But on this particular day in March 3rd of 1938, the water was coming down the creek, which is crisscrosses the colony in the La Jolla area, and we lived on Gonzales Street. It had rained and rained the night before, but on this particular day, on the 3rd, we had experienced a lot of rain. The water had crested in the river or the creek or the arroyo, more or less. And, you know, that arroyo, every time it rained, it used to go up a lot. The water level would go up. But this time, the water level kept rising and rising, and it was not going down at all. And my mother and father, Pedro and Victoria, they said, well, don't worry about it. The water level is going to go down after a while. From the time that we saw the water come up on this particular day, on March 3rd, the water kept coming up. It was about past noon, almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when the principal of the La Jolla Elementary School, his name was Chet Whitten, and he came up walking down every street, starting on Blue Gum Street, Tafoya Street, Gonzales Street, Vista Street, Simmons, and Cypress Street. And he was telling everybody and yelling as loud as he could to go and to higher ground. We were in very much big danger of imminent flood coming in and everybody possibility of getting drowned. So our family started moving to the school, and finally our family got to the school and we realized that our cousins were there. And my cousin Joe Venegas and his wife Teresa, they had a daughter named Pauline, Marcella, and Margaret. Margaret was 1.5 years old, and in the excitement as they got to the school, they realized that the car had stalled on La Jolla Road, and Margaret was in the back seat, and they forgot. When they got to the school, my cousin Joe, I remember saying, I gotta go back and get the baby. We left her in the back seat of the car. And that was really, really amazing how nowadays we talk about somebody leaving the children in the back seat of the car when it's real hot. Well, in this case, in 1938, they left their child in the back seat of the car and possibly would have lost their life. Because when we left the school, coming back to our home, the car was tilted over on its side, and sure enough, Margaret would have drowned there for sure. Most of the people stayed in the La Jolla Elementary School. As we got there, everybody that got designated to different places, right away they told us all the children have to get up and sit on top of the closed cabinets. The closed cabinets were surrounded the room, and they also had tables in the work tables in the rooms. All the adults were told that if the water came up higher, they would have to stand on the tabletops. And of course the children, we were up there, and it was really a lot of fun. We were having a great time. As the hours went by, we realized that this was really getting serious because the water was lapping the porch that was lined with the pipes, and they had a railing, and the water was lapping the top of the porch, and it was almost 4 to 5 feet high. And pretty soon, about maybe 6 o'clock, as it was starting to get dark, the water started coming into the classroom. So, wow, we were figured this is really getting serious. Everybody was really, really quiet. There was a lot of little chattering going on. People they were talking like, hey, this is gonna be really, really dangerous. And sure enough, some people had brought candles. When the candles were lit, I don't know what time that was, but I am assuming right now, as I can remember, the water was about 2 feet high inside the classrooms, and when they lit those candles, what a feeling that was. And to see the water that had risen that much, it was amazing. And you could hear the roar of the creek, the little arroyo that was usually so dusty and dry. It was like a roaring train going through there. As time went by, it got later and later, and as we could see, we were up on top of the cabinets of the closed closets, and you could see everybody standing by that time. The water was already past the tabletops, and you could not see the tables no more, and the water was just dirty brown. I can remember it was not clean water, it was dirty brown, and it had like a lot of oil in the water. And this being now, I remember now, that they talked about that the oil wells in the Atwood area, there was a lot of oil tanks, and some of the oil tanks were tipped over, and so that's where the oil was coming from. Well, as night fell, came midnight, and you could hear the squeaks, the pounding, and the roar of the water. You could hear squeaks, crash, booms, and you figure, well, what is happening here? So all night long, believe it or not, I don't think anybody slept. And you know, I look back now and I says to myself, how did we survive in there? You said, didn't anybody need to go to the bathroom? Well, evidently not, because I'll tell you what, we were up there and we didn't have to go to the bathroom. And usually when there's water, you have to go to the bathroom, but nobody went to the bathroom. So we stayed awake all night long, and at one time or another, before things really, really got bad, my grandmother, Longina, she started praying the rosary. In the morning when daylight came, wow, you should have seen all the people were really frightened. As kids, we had gotten over this having a lot of fun, but the seriousness and the danger that we were in was really, really something else.
More than 3,700 storm refugees in Los Angeles and Orange counties were quartered by relief agencies in theaters, schools, public halls, and campsites. 1,500 homes in Los Angeles were declared uninhabitable.
We walked up to the railings, and when we took a look towards the colony, the homes, and the noises that we had heard at nighttime, we realized that all these homes were just totally gone and destroyed. They were piled on Blue Gum Street, they were piled up against each other, and as morning went, the water was receding really, really fast by then. Everybody was really quiet. We could see through the windows, we could see the homes that were really damaged, and that was really terrible. And we realized then, my mother and dad realized that what we had gone through a major flood. As morning got later and later into the noontime era, I really don't know who said that we could go and leave, but they did tell the owners of two of the stores that were on La Jolla Road that they could go over there and see if they could salvage food. And sure enough, they made a food run, and they went to the two stores. And the owners took the parents that wanted to go with them. My dad was one of them. They went and they collected cold cuts, and they were not sliced, and they brought bread, canned goods, And you know, they brought all this food and they dispersed it among the classrooms. Being there was 6 classrooms, and they dispersed all this food into the classrooms, and everybody had like free food, and we were having a great time because it was free food, wow, in your own school. After starting later in the day, about 3 o'clock, the water had receded down all the way almost to the arroyo. So they told parents, well, I'll tell you what, he says, you can go. And the people that had come back had already talked about some really bad scenes. So we started walking, our family started walking, and we started walking on Blue Gum Street, down La Jolla Road, and you know, we saw the Venegas car that had driven over there where they had forgotten their baby in the back seat. It was tilted over almost on its side, and if they had left the baby there any longer, for sure she would have drowned. Well, we started walking down the street past Tafoya Street, which is first street on the barrio, and we were throwing sticks, kicking into the mud. There was puddles left from the water was left in these puddles, and we saw the street was just homes, and they were scattered just like checkers on a checkerboard. And gosh, you didn't believe it. So then we came to Gonzales Street, and the same thing. Boy, oh boy, there was homes all over the street. You couldn't see to the end of the street. But when we got to Gonzales Street and we saw our home, it was just a pile of debris. As some of these pictures that are in here will indicate, how could anybody have survived this flood? And our home was just pushed against the Venegas homes. They were our neighbors, and it was just terrible. Another thing that I want to talk about is our church. It's a little church that was on La Jolla Road, and it was named Virgen de Guadalupe Catholic Church. And when we were walking from our house on Gonzales Street and we went up to La Jolla Road, we had to go past the church, and we saw the church with the doors wide open, and the mud was just pouring out of the church. And it was so sad to see that, because that was our church that we used to go to church every Sunday morning, and they tolled the bell, and it was so neat. But it was sad to see the mud just pouring out the front double doors that it had. As we came back into the La Jolla area on La Jolla Road, the city of Placentia sent trucks, and they were probably trucks that they used at the packing houses. And a lot of people were taken to the American Legion Hall on Chapman Avenue and Murray Street. They took us down there with nothing on our backs. We were all wet. And how we survived that night without not going to the bathroom, no food until the following day, the 4th of March, is beyond me. Well, when they took us to the trucks, they unloaded us and they took us into the upper level. There was a dance floor and the American Legion, and down in the basement was the kitchen. So our family decided to go to the basement, probably because the kitchen was there. And they had cots, and they gave us blankets, and lots of blankets, and they gave us some dry clothes. And they tucked us in for that night of the 4th of March, and then on the morning of the 4th and the 5th, they took us to Valencia High School to take showers. After everybody's all cleaned up, they took us back to the American Legion. The same thing with the women. They took their bath, they gave them clothes, they took us back to the American Legion, and they gave us a nice meal, and they took us back to the tent city that the National Guard had said on approximately on the last street of the barrio, which was Cypress Street. And they had set up a tent city, and they had water tanks, portable bathrooms, portable kitchens, and you know, it was really a lot of fun. They said that the National Guard set the tent city there, but you know, I never saw any soldiers. I never saw anybody that looked like a soldier, but there was one tent where they had a lot of people working there. The American Red Cross, they were asking a lot of questions. They have lost any family members, how many people had lost what, and if we had any place to go. And my father was employed at the Santa Ana Ranch, at the Rancho Santa Ana Botanical Garden. The superintendent of the ranch came over and told my dad, he said, Pete, he says, we have a home for you. If you want to go over there and live there, that's fine, bring your family. So that's what happened to us.
Historians have long argued about the total number of dead in the 1938 flood. Initial newspaper reports stated that 58 had perished. But some of the dead and missing turned out to be alive. Both the Santa Ana Register and Anaheim Bulletin had reduced the number to 21 by the time searchers found the last victim, Ildefonso Agúndez, a month after the March 3rd flood. A 1942 United States Department of the Interior study bumped the number up to 34. No one will ever know the truth. Placentia resident Joe Aguirre remembers that many single male Mexican immigrants lived alongside the Santa Ana riverbanks, and they just disappeared. No one ever asked for them.
One of the major things that we had lost at the home was my sister Lupe. She was taking lessons in piano playing, and when we walked into that house, the piano player was flat, and it was just covered with mud. It was really, really sad for my sister. And the rest of the other thing we lost was photographs and valuable papers that my mother and dad had. But that was not important. It was more important that we survived the flood, and we came back to the home after it was moved in place, and we enjoyed the life that we had in the Rancho Santa Ana, and we didn't come back to about 5 years later, and we came to our home, and it was all moved back into place thanks to the American Red Cross. They gave my mother and dad a check to pay for the moving and the furniture that they put inside the house, and thank God we survived the flood of 1938. Final thing, I thank God that all my brothers and sisters that survived the flood, they are still living. My oldest sister, Lupe, she's 85 years old. My brother Armando is 84. My sister Mary is in her 80s. And my brothers, my twin brother Leo and I are this year in 2007, we're 79 years old, and my younger sister was born at the Rancho Santa Ana after the flood, and we're a happy family. We're still all alive. 3 girls and 3 boys.
Eddie's story is of the long nights spent with his and other families on higher ground within the protection of the brick McFadden School building. Today, there's a simple plaque near the flagpole of Placentia's Melrose Elementary School, which was built on the site of the old McFadden School. This historical marker commemorates the Great Flood of 1938. The Placentia Library History Room is grateful to Eddie for his story. We mourn the loss of life, but celebrate the survivors and the community that came together to support them in a time of need. Our generation owes it to them to be wise enough so that such a disaster does not happen again. The Great Flood of 1938 led the federal government to build Prado Dam on the Santa Ana River near Corona. The 106-foot tall dam was completed in 1941. To further protect the public, in 1986, Congress authorized the $1.6 billion Santa Ana River Mainstream Project, which involves everything from lining parts of the river to building the Seven Oaks Dam, now under construction near Redlands. More than $500 million has been spent by local, state, and federal agencies. But the project is not yet fully funded.
Okay, whoa.
Got it.
Sorry about that. Didn't know that was gonna happen.
It's all right.
Thank you for showing the film. Thank you, Eddie, for narrating the film. I mean, as you can see by the visual there, there was a lot of destruction. And to be able to say, I'm here, I survived, and I can share my experience with you, that's why I love history, because we have the ability to do that. And I also love history because you can look back and laugh. I'm sure he wasn't planning on making jokes, or he was a kid, he was 10 years old. It was probably fun to him. It was probably an experience that they were having a great time with, not knowing the seriousness of it. So again, I really appreciate your telling the story. And also, speaking on behalf of the historical committee, if there are any other families or any other family members that were survivors or have heard stories of survivors, please contact the committee. We would love to get your stories, right? I mean, that we're searching for it. We want to hear what happened as far as different perspectives, okay? One other request that Eddie asked of me was to recognize the families that lost family members during the flood. And again, I apologize, my computer service went out. I wasn't able to make a copy. But Eddie would like for me to call out the names of those people who lost their lives, and for us to just recognize and have a very, very brief moment of remembrance of these people. So I'll do it as quickly as possible. From the Atwood area, there was a Yadelfoncio Agundez. He was 68 years old. Teresa Barragan, 19. Rodolfo Barragan, 12 years of age. Estela Barragan, 3 years of age. Teddy Casas, 10 years. A daughter of a gentleman named Mr. Rodriguez, age unknown. There was a Mrs. Riggs, age unknown, and a man named Rios, age unknown. And these are through Eddie's own personal recollection. From the La Jolla area, Rolando Ritana, 12 years. Maria Ritana, 35 years. Francis Ritana, age unknown. Guadalupe Dominguez, 6 years. Delfina Nienguez, 3 years. From the Santa Ana Canyon area, Lupe Estrella, 20 years. Marios Basarain, 81 years. Francis Montano, 2 years. Carmelita Montano, 8 years. And Francis Montano, 28 years. So please, just bow your heads and have a moment of silence in recognition of the lives lost. Okay. Thank you for that. And again, Eddie, we are honored to have Eddie here with us today, who shared his own personal experience. He will now open himself up to possible questions that anyone here in the audience would have. Eddie, you want to come join me up here at the table? Okay, does Does anyone have a question they would like to direct to Mr. Castro?
I just want to know if there's anyone else in the room that survived that flood.
Oh, is there? Any family members? Yes, and your name? Agundas. Please, would you like to stand, please, so we can recognize you? Another survivor? How old were you at the time? You were 5 years of age at the time. Thank you. We'd love to talk to you also. I'm sure there's some. Anyone else here that survived? Yes.
I lost my grandmother and my uncle in that flood.
Oh, my God.
This is my sister.
Okay.
And my mother was good friends with Mr. Castro. She was only 5.
At the time?
Yes.
Thank you for sharing. Sorry for your loss. Okay. Questions for Mr. Castro here? Yes.
The people that lost their lives, was it because they weren't warned ahead of time, or they didn't leave their homes, or, I mean, you were safe in the school, did they just not leave their homes and then?
That's a very good question you asked me there, because, you know, at 10 years old, for me to remember some of these things, I feel very, very gifted, because, you know, a 10-year-old, they just run all over the place. But I remember those things that happened, just like if it had happened maybe a week ago. But then, the other note is that now I see somebody and I know him by view, but I'm forgetting a lot of names. But talking about Mr. Chet Whitten, he was the only one that came to the colony in La Jolla there, and he was the only one that warned anybody about a flood happening. And it's pretty amazing. Nobody knew. How did he know that we were going to have a flood? And that question was asked a lot. And if you, where did he get the information from? How come, who opened the school? Nobody knew who opened the school. And it was really interesting because a lot of people figured, well, we don't have to go to the school because you know, we're not going to have a flood. But like I said here before, it was very, very important that when they got there, they realized that we were in dire danger.
That was great. Thank you.
And you know what, before I go any further, I would just like to thank everybody that saw the article in the paper that we were gonna have a little, the historical committee was gonna be having this little get-together. And I'm very, very thankful that you're interested in knowing about the way it was in the 1930s. For me, yeah, imagine in 1938, I was 10 years old, and I can remember those things. It is really, really nice that you're here and you're learning more about the area that you live. And I know that you enjoy the city of Placentia. We love it. I lived here all my life.
I think the city pretty much sells itself. It's so beautiful, but bright, yes.
Thank you for being here.
All right, does anyone else have a question they want to direct to Eddie? Eddie?
Yes, Isabel.
What about Mr. Whitten going out in his rowboat?
Never heard of that one.
What? Well, he used to tell the story of going out in his rowboat and to get families.
Well, you know what?
I heard that story. But you've heard it. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. He's a damn liar. I never saw him on a rowboat. The
What
water.
day was this, when you were called out? What time of day or night was it?
Okay. Let's see. Today is 78 years ago, plus 5 days.
Okay, but
Okay.
What time?
So the time that it happened, it started about, maybe 12:30 in the afternoon, and then went up to about 3 o'clock. That's when he started walking around, and we went into the school. So it was about maybe 4 o'clock. They had a pretty good group of people over at the school.
Was it a school day?
I never looked that up. I don't know what day it was. No. Hey, I was only 10 years old.
Yes, ma'am. Eddie?
Was Mr. Witten the principal at the school, at La Jolla Street School at that time?
Yes.
So, okay, the rowboat, that's something we need to kind of look at and see if there's any substance to that. Anyone else? One more question? Yes.
How many animals were lost?
Whoa, that is something that I did not document.
Okay, I'll tell you what, we had just about everybody in the colony in the La Jolla area at that time. Everybody had their animals. They had chickens, goats, pigs, whatever. Well, we had a pig, and the pig got washed away, and nobody knew what happened to it. But about a week or so later on, they brought the pig back to my dad at the Rancho Santa Ana, and that whoever found it, I don't know who it was, but that was our pig. And chickens and other animals, they got wiped out. And one thing that there was talk about the oil, and there was a lot of oil wells there, and the water was really oily. The silt that was coming out and the oil mixed up pretty well. So the orange groves that were flooded, it got really sticky. And they had a crew of people digging, making a little well on each tree so they wouldn't what do you call it, suffocate. And that's some of the things that took place.
All right, I think that's about our time. Thank you for joining us. I hope I shared enough information. We can learn more about the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlene. Thanks, Eddie. Let's have one more round of applause. Before you guys leave tonight, I got a couple of plugs. Next Monday, April 4th, we're going to have the next local history lecture series. That's on the Orange County land grants. So I don't know about you, but I don't know very much about the Orange County land grants that kind of brought people to the area. So be sure to come back and hear more about that. It'll be held by Martin Chavez. So if you remember the foodie history, he's pretty funny. So I'm sure he'll bring a lot of humor to it. So be sure to join us on Monday, April 4th. And then also for the city of Placentia. So today we were talking about natural disasters, and I don't know if you know this, but if there is another natural disaster in the area, say it's an earthquake or a flood, what are we going to do as a community? Where are our resources? And our resources may be tied up doing other things. So if you're interested in helping out your community during an emergency, I would highly recommend attending the CERT training. I attended it for the library the last time they had it. It was wonderful. It is a couple evenings out of the week, and so if you're interested, there are some flyers in the back. Be sure to take them. It is a free program. Yes, it is a free program. It's really fun, and you'll be able to help your community as well. So be sure to take a look at those. And lastly,
it's held at the Witten Center.
Oh, that's right. It's held at the Witten Center. So just like Mr. Witten was able to help his community, you can follow in his footsteps and help your community next time there's an emergency. And then, of course, yes, thank you. There are some wonderful surveys that hopefully everybody's got one. If not, maybe you can share with a neighbor. Please do fill those out. We do read them. And we do take your suggestions so that we can improve our program and have additional topics for local history. So you can fill those out, put them on the back table. Please take the cookies home. The library staff will thank you. They do not want to eat them. So have a good evening, and